Conventionally, campaign groups have been associated with working class. But what we see now is more and more middle classes are getting involved. Why do you think that is?
I think the challenges that are facing our society, both here in Britain and internationally, are now so enormous that they transcend, many of them transcend class boundaries. So whether it's a question of the environment that faces everybody, confronts us all with an existential issue, or whether it's a question of peace and war questions affect the whole of society. It's a question of spending spending priorities. Those also affect people across society. And I think we're seeing a number of policies being adopted by our government, or they're attempting to pursue policies that will have a negative impact on society as a whole. So I think many more people are now being brought into campaigning as a result.
In your case, what inspired you to come and join these campaign groups?
Well, I think all my life, since I was at school really, but then as a student and then as a young adult, I was very much involved with the peace and justice campaigns that were taking place around that time, around the 1970s, 1980s and so on, the big campaigns against cruise missiles, against apartheid in South Africa, real big questions that mobilised many people across society. That was my first entry into campaigning. Then I think after the end of the Cold War, maybe I was less interested in the CND and peace questions. Maybe, like many other people, I thought that maybe there'd be a new peaceful world order, but very rapidly after that, into the mid-1990s and subsequently, it's been clear that hasn't been the case. I think there've been great concerns and questions about war, the Iraq War, for example, many questions of that nature. And of course, the question of nuclear weapons is something that confronts society too. So since my early days, I have been very concerned about nuclear, anti-nuclear and peace campaigning, and that remains with me as a cause today.
Now, one of the things CND is campaigning for is scrapping Trident nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And preventing its replacement. For example, CND is going to have a big march next week in London. How would you respond to those who might say that Trident is in the best interest of Britain?
Well, yes, you've touched on our key campaigning question. On the 27th of February, we have a big Stop Trident demonstration in London because the government is currently trying to win parliamentary consent for replacing the Trident nuclear weapons system at a cost of well over £100 billion, maybe as much as £183 billion. I think people are increasingly turning away from nuclear weapons, partly because of the financial cost, which is huge, and that means money not spent on important social spending like health, education, jobs or conventional weaponry even. But there are other questions too. Can huge nuclear weapons submarines contribute to our security in the 21st century? That's a big question. They were around in the Cold War, that's when they were built. Many people in those days thought, well, maybe you did need them, but now those arguments are falling by the wayside. And two very compelling points that have been made recently are that when the submarines were first built, they were built because people said they were undetectable underwater. You know, there would be a secret nuclear weapon system. Nowadays, with drone technology, underwater drone technology developing and other new technologies, the idea that a nuclear weapons submarine could be undetectable is absolutely absurd. And now, of course, with cyber attack, many people say, experts now say that any system can be hacked. So the nuclear A submarine system could be hacked, so it could be made redundant, could be completely useless, or perhaps even could be turned against us. So there are all kinds of technological reasons, never mind political reasons. There are many technological reasons why nuclear weapons would bring great harm upon us. They could make us much less safe. And when you consider the security threats that we do face today, like terrorism, like climate change, like cyber attack, indeed things like pandemics and organised crime, none of those things can be resolved through nuclear weapons. So we need to have a real good assessment of what we need for our security, and who will say now that nuclear weapons can resolve our security challenges. Very few people could now honestly say that they believe that to be the case.
Change in the Labour Party leadership and somewhat internal conflict within the party. How does that affect pressure groups, campaigns group like CND?
I think we now see a huge opportunity for the Labour Party and for British politics more broadly, because for many years now Labour has had a policy supporting Britain's nuclear weapons system. And although many people within the Labour Party and an increasing number across society oppose them, so it's very positive, I think, that the new leader, Jeremy Corbyn, has initiated a defence review.
I think that is very important, because in past, say till about 1989, the Labour Party, when in a position, was influenced in its direction about nuclear weapons by CND. And now, do you think there might be an opportunity that that kind of influence would take place again?
Well, I think that there's every possibility that Labour Party members will be open to all perspectives. I know that there are many CND members within the Labour Party, but equally many who aren't. But I think all we're asking is that Labour Party members, people involved in their policy making process, fairly listen to and consider all the arguments. That's all we're asking for, that they fairly and objectively listen to and discuss all the arguments so they can come to the right conclusion.
Now, you have been involved in CND for quite some time. You chaired it, now you are General Secretary.
Yes, that's right.
What is your evaluation of things which might have worked well?
During the course of our history, there have been many times when we have affected what has been happening and what has been going on. Not only CND, but anti-nuclear campaigns in other countries. So, for example, in the 1970s, opposition to the neutron bomb prevented the United States from introducing that. The neutron bomb was a nuclear bomb which didn't destroy property or housing or anything like that. It just killed people, so which would have been a terrible thing. So we were able to prevent that taking place. We've contributed to getting a whole range of treaties, like the Partial Test Ban Treaty, for example, which put an end to testing of nuclear weapons in the atmosphere, which were very detrimental to health and the environment. And as one political commentator said at the time of our 50th anniversary, he said, I don't agree with CND, but what they've done is make it impossible for politicians to be cavalier about the idea of using nuclear weapons. No one could see it as anything other than a terrible tragedy that nuclear weapons would be used, and that should be avoided at all costs. So we've helped to create a climate of opposition and concern about nuclear weapons, even though we still have them. And we're hoping that in the next few years we will be able to reach that tipping point, partly through our own work, but also, of course, through trends within society, through popular understanding about the risks we face, through understanding of real security challenges and so on. I believe it's possible that we will be able to overcome the final opposition to the removal of nuclear weapons.